Hello and welcome to the Society of Construction Law Australia's podcast, the podcast where we look at technical and legal issues facing the Australian construction industry. My name's Melissa Yeo and I'm chair of the Society's Communications Subcommittee. Today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Kevin Pascoe, Principal Project Manager APAC Building and Infrastructure for Jacobs in Brisbane. Kevin's career in the construction industry spans 25 years and has seen him undertake engineering and project management roles both at home in Australia and abroad. As such, he is perfectly placed to share his insights on risk management and project delivery. Kevin, you're an engineer and Principal Project Manager Asia Pacific Building and Infrastructure for Jacobs. Can you tell me a bit about how you came to be in this role and the types of projects you have worked on at Jacobs?
I guess how I come to be at Jacobs was through some networks. I actually remember about 9 years ago, I phoned a guy that I knew who was actually not really a boss, but a more senior person in another company I worked for. And just a networking chat, I gave him a call to catch up and he responded by answering my call with, what are you doing? I need to talk to you about a job. I was like, no, hang on a second. I'm just catching up for lunch. And sure enough, before I know it, after a couple of months, he'd managed to bring me on. And so I joined at the time, it was SoCLA Knight Mertz, SKM.
Yep.
And I joined in the power generation sort of area to look at more client relationships and business development sort of areas. And I did that for about a year. It wasn't really my forte. My forte has always been more in that project management space. Mm-hmm. So eventually a project came up that they asked me to lead. And off I went and did that back into the project management space. And I realised that was my natural home. I mean, I did power generation for a few years. I've been mining projects, etc. And then a few years ago, I moved across into the infrastructure space more. Mm-hmm. So I've been in that space for the last few years, helping out on big design projects for roads, rail.
And are those typically focused in Queensland or are they all over Australia?
Typically those are Queensland-based. A couple of large projects around town that I've been involved with. We typically at Jacobs get involved in doing the design, often working for either the principal, being the end client, like Transport and Main Roads, or otherwise for a contractor. Typically the engineers take the engineering design leadership and the design management of that project and do all the design, but they really do need somebody to help with the project management and the commercial management of those large jobs.
Yeah.
These are multi-million-dollar commissions, and if our engineers go wayward a little way, not doing what they're exactly supposed to be doing, then it costs a fair bit of money.
Indeed. I have to say, I've had a look at your CV. And you're a bit of a Renaissance man. So you have engineering qualifications. You have a Master's of Construction Law from Melbourne Uni, professional certificate of arbitration. You're fluent in Spanish, and you've been a pilot, or you may still be a pilot. What I'm curious to know is how these additional qualifications and these varied qualifications helped you in your role as a project manager?
Yes, I learnt to paint years ago while I was living in Spain as well, so that's very Renaissance. But look, pilot training probably hasn't helped a lot in terms of what I do every day, but it's all part of the mix, isn't it? And I started off wanting to be a pilot for a career, a commercial pilot, and I trained as a pilot for a while, but chose to stay in engineering more so. All of those experiences has been great, and they've actually really overlaid each other at different times. So if I take as an example the arbitration certificate, I was driven to do that after completing the construction law masters, but primarily because through delivering projects, particularly in the project management commercial space, you're constantly having to justify yourself and justify claims that you want to make. If I put myself in the mind of, for example, a contractor to who I might be making a claim, putting myself in their mind as to what this claim is coming in is the best way of getting it up and having it been successful. And so I really wanted to understand that arbitration practice itself in case we ended up in dispute or something like that. But more so it was to really understand the nuance into the arguments and to draw that nexus of the causation in the arguments as to what's happened and then the quantification of it. And it's been great because ultimately what that leads me to do these days is when somebody comes to me within the company and asks for a piece of advice, this is what's happened, what do you think? What can we do? Can we make this argument? And, I'm sitting there raising my eyebrow and thinking, no, I've got nothing for you. I'm really going to struggle to make an argument out of that. I can't make something fictitious when I know I can shoot it down myself.
Yeah. You probably save the business a lot of time and effort and money having that expertise.
I think that is the case. If you really do think about it, I've seen various people from various sides over time have arguments about certain things. And, the only reason why something might get up is because of a relationship. It's not due to the legal argument itself.
I'd like to talk a bit now about construction contracts, because obviously that underlies a lot of what you do. Now, I'm absolutely certain that you would have seen a myriad of them, bespoke, Australian standard, international standards, that sort of thing. Can you tell me what, if any, observations you have made in relation to construction contracts generally?
There's a couple of things, I guess, from my perspective in project management and delivery. To start with, I think that contracts seem to they're just far too complicated. They typically have so many errors and ambiguities in the language. It's quite surprising to me, actually.
Do you think a function because they're too large?
I think that is part of it. The cross-referencing is notoriously always mucked up. I'm looking at a contract now. I've just started opening it up and, I'm in the second page and I've already identified a cross-referencing error and I've rung the lawyer and said, I found an error, and they've said, what, only one? Well, I'm only on page 2. So, I think of another contract in about a year ago that we were discussing and negotiating with the client on, and there was a certain clause in there and I couldn't figure it out. And I've got enough training now to be able to sort of put 2 and 2 together on these things. So I rang the lawyer, and a very experienced lawyer, and they were on the phone, and half an hour we prevaricated backwards and forwards on this, and neither of us could understand what the term of the contract was supposed to do. And this was a large job that the contract was nearing completion, and I was sitting there potentially having to then deliver this project and thinking, well, if we can't figure it out now and we're on the same side and we can make arguments to and fro, what chance have we got later on? This is just this contract, this term is a dispute. Yeah. It's just there. It's going to happen. So it's not going to serve a function. We're already going to be distracted and losing money and wasting money on trying to actually run the job. Yeah. I guess contracts often started, if you think back to the Australian standards when they were developed, it was a committee that developed them. There were generally, I guess, engineers and other delivery type people involved in commenting and making sure that they would be set up appropriately. If I think to contracts like the FIDIC contracts or NEC, these contracts are standard form contracts that have been developed by and large with a lot of participation of delivery people, engineers. What I think has happened in Australia in the last 20 or so years is obviously those contracts with Australian standard contracts have not been updated. And over time, those contracts have been, they've turned into bespoke contracts developed by law firms and further advanced, and the engineers have been left out of the equation. And so what you end up now with more and more is presented with these contracts which are very legal. They attempt to address the legal risks associated with the project, but there's no administrative element to actually how you run the project itself embedded within the general conditions of the contract. And I find that more and more the two parts of the contract, the general conditions, which is sort of the more legal part, and the technical scope element, the more engineering part, they're developed separately, one by engineers, one by lawyers, and the two don't seem to meet in the middle very easily. And when attempts are tried to be made to put the two together, there's no time. Where everyone's going to communicate and collaborate together. But if the contract is forcing us down this very narrow, prescriptive process which doesn't meet the aims of what the project's about, that's a real problem. Because as you would know, later on when you get into disputes, all is lost because you haven't followed a particular technical procedure.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think you wrote a paper a couple of years ago on active risk management that won the Student Brooking Prize in 2017. And it seems to me that this might be where you're heading with what we do to improve the contractual situation. Can you tell me a bit more about what you mean by active risk management?
Well, I guess the point that I was trying to make in that paper was that, exactly as we were talking to there, the contracts are developed in a vacuum almost to the engineering, and so that the risks are allocated supposedly to the parties who can best manage them. But inevitably, you can't identify every risk.
Certainly not.
And as you deliver the project, the people actually delivering the project, the lawyers are often way and away. They're off back in the corporate office doing their next thing, developing, negotiating the next contract. And so the people actually delivering the project are having to deal with these issues that arise. And when something arises which is a bit unforeseen, there's two elements to it. You're going to be bound by this contract that forces you to do certain things, and all of a sudden you might be deciding that actually it's not what we want to do. Yeah. We want to have a different arrangement, a different relationship. What I was trying to advocate in actively managing risk is having a mechanism within the contract that actually forces both parties to come together and to collaborate, because apportioning all the risk to one party, it's just not going to work if that party can't manage the risk. Yeah. The risk is going to manifest itself. On a lot of these large projects, I had a lot of experience with EPC projects where the liquidated damages are ultimately capped at 10% of the contract value. Well, to a principal, that's not going to get you very far.
The party that has been identified as being the most able to bear the risk at the outset, that certainly can shift and change as you go through the project. So having a mechanism to alleviate the issues that arise with that would be very sensible. In your paper, I recall you raised having a mechanism for reallocating the risk. Now, I thought that was quite smart, because it certainly would seem to me to foster more collaboration between the parties to sort it out, rather than just instantaneously going into their adversarial positions, firing off a notice and going through the procedure.
Yep.
Have you ever seen that done?
In my experience, when these things have typically been done, it's one of those cases where the two parties decide to put the contract aside a little and work the relationship. I am certainly aware of situations on projects I've been involved with where the owner, the principal, has stepped in and said, listen, we're going to get involved and we're going to help sort this out for the contractor, even though it's really their job. Yeah. But we know that it's in our best interest. Yeah. I think of a project a few years ago I'm aware of where it was a third-party risk, and the principal put it upon the contractor and said, look, you deal with that third party. And the contractor probably thought that the owner had some influence with them, but there was certainly no contractual relationship. Mm-hmm. But ultimately what happened was that the third party just didn't play ball. They just weren't interested. It was not their project. It was an impost on their business to have to actually even come to meetings or speak about the project. So they were quite recalcitrant in their approach. The poor old contractor couldn't do anything about it except complain to the principal and say, we can't proceed, we can't progress. I mean, I actually thought at the time there was a case maybe for some sort of frustration or some misrepresentation or something. Mm-hmm. But certainly, it was a major problem. And so, ultimately what happened there was that the third party took their time. Yeah. There was no ability to pressure them by either party, and it presented a poor outcome for the contractor in terms of delay and cost, and a poor outcome for the principal, because ultimately their project was delayed. And I mean, they may not have been so out of pocket, but certainly, it wasn't a good look for their project.
The other thing you mentioned as well is risk management standard ISO 31000 of 2009, and the possibility of incorporating this into contracts to address the risk management question. Can you tell me a bit about that? Because I actually, until I read your paper, I'd never heard of that standard. And I thought, oh, indeed, why aren't we using this standard? I mean, it's certainly not one I've ever heard of or looked at.
The thing with the Australian, or that ISO risk standard, it's also an Australian standard, it's the same number. It actually was born out of Australia. So Australia was the first place, Australian standards were the first place where they codified risk management. Yeah. And then that exported overseas to the International Standards Organisation, ISO, who then adopted it, which is why the reason that the Australian standard, New Zealand standard, the ISO standard are all the same.
But you've never seen it used here?
It's certainly not put into contracts. And I guess certainly in project management, we use risk management constantly. In a company like Jacobs, a large design company, we use the principles of risk management right at the outset of even pricing a project. And we identify all the potential things. We try to quantify those up to a certain point, and it helps us price our work.
Well, certainly you'd need to know the size of the contract management team that you're going to have to spend on to manage those risks.
It also facilitates those conversations with clients to sort of say, listen, if we're able to change this element of the project or a contract or the responsibility or whatever it is, then we can do something about mitigating the risk, but also reducing the cost. Because as you know, if the risk management has to be paid for, and if it has to be costed in a lump sum project, the client's paying for it whether it eventuates or not. So I'm all for trying to sort of get it out there in the open and say, look, let's try to not pay for this thing to the degree that it might occur. In a project, in the technical specification, we laboriously quote standards.
Yes.
The bridge has to be designed to...
I've seen 15 of them referred to, And then I go and I read them all, and I'm...
No, you don't read them all.
I've read quite a few. When you're in a dispute, you tend to read them all.
So certainly they're always cited in the technical specification, and we follow them religiously during a project execution. The other things are cited often in contracts around safety management, certainly, and certain requirements over safety management. I just don't know why the contract doesn't also cite risk management as having to be done. Now, the place for that is probably in the general conditions. It's not in the technical specification, because what we're talking about here is having both parties actively look to each other, discuss the issues that are arising, and constantly work to mitigate them in an open sort of a manner.
As opposed to just firing off a notice.
Right, or hiding it. Notoriously, schedule risk is one of the big things that so many times, it's the principle requires the contractor to provide a schedule and to be provided up to date at every month, etc. And notoriously, the schedule always shows...
everything's fine.
Everything's fine. It's all going to be delivered on the end date. Everything just squashes up. Whereas the contractor themselves have got another schedule in the back pocket, which is showing a bit of a problem. There's no point in hiding that. Get it out in the open and talk to it. So, I actually thought, why not actually quote and require the standard to be followed? Standards are not prescriptive.
I was just going to ask that. I would expect it wouldn't be super prescriptive.
Of course not.
Like on this date, you have to do X, and then 2 days later.
It's all on principles.
Workshop it.
Identify the risks. And yet I remember years ago meeting with a client and I said to them, so how do you want me to interface our risks of our bit of our project into your project risk? And they looked at me and said, we don't really do much about that. We don't have a risk register. And I said, right. I said, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll highlight all mine in the monthly report.
I'll do a risk register.
and I'll send it to you every month, and you can... so I'm certainly identifying the issues and looking out for our risk and mitigating it. But it is, it's frightening how many clients still don't do that.
I think it was a couple of weeks ago I saw that Kiri Parr had posted on Twitter a report by Consult Australia that talked about people and culture being the leading factor in project success. First of all, do you agree with that? And also what you look for when you're building a team to facilitate that? Because it seems to me to be very important, because if you're going to have somebody across the table from you or somebody that you're going to send in to liaise with the other side to try and workshop these risks, they need to be collegiate and very good at teamwork. Oh, look, absolutely. It all comes down to the people. That's the biggest variable in the whole thing. One road project is largely the same as the next road project. That's probably heresy to some civil engineers, but it really does come down to the people involved. I remember a job years ago where we had the kick-off meeting, and I walked out of that and went back to the office and said to my offsider, this is all going to end in tears. and my job's to make sure that they're not ours. At the kick-off meeting.
And sure enough, that project ended up with one of the companies going bankrupt.
Yikes.
And you could just see it from the outset, the behaviours, the attitude of the people involved. They knew everything. They weren't going to be told, anything. They would do it their way. They didn't need assistance from anybody. So look, when I look to try to get people involved in a team, there's a few things. Diversity is hugely important. I know it's a bit of a buzzword of late, and a lot of people talk about it. And it's good because it's certainly raised the profile and raised the awareness for a lot of people who might not have naturally thought of that. Certainly it's highlighted it more to me. In engineering, diversity has not always been there very well. I think cultural diversity has probably been a little bit more to the fore, particularly for a lot of my experience with international sort of power type projects. Certainly, one project you'd be in Mexico working. I had a project in Mexico with French owner, and it was being financed by sort of various organisations, some out of the States. So you were dealing with Mexicans, you're dealing with French, Americans. There was Spanish involved, then the odd Aussie like me. So that diversity was always there. So that was good, and that brought. It brings its challenges, but it was really quite useful. These days, more and more with digital engineering and, with Australia being such an expensive place to deliver projects, there's more and more offshoring of work and push towards lower cost centres to do that work. So that's even more and more important to get that cultural diversity and all the elements to do with it. There's always been the young and old is really important, I find, in a team. You can't have just a bunch of old people.
Are we old people?
I'm not there yet, although I feel like it some days.
Indeed, neither am I.
I remember a job recently, going and talking to someone, and I was looking around the room and I thought, far out, what's this grouping, And it was a mining project.
Right.
In, I think it was to do with some sort of a hard rock mining. So,
okay.
I don't know, copper or something like that, gold. And, the room was just full of 50 to 60-year-old white males.
Yep.
No women whatsoever, not even hardly any young person in the room. And I just thought, wow, how's this going to really go well when you've just got, this bunch of old blokes all doing the job.
Yeah.
So,
you need the different perspectives.
Oh, absolutely. I did a risk workshop for a project a few years ago, and the same sort of thing when I assessed, asked who's going to be involved and the names are given to me. I said, right, well, I think we need to spice that up a little bit.
Yeah, I like that, spice it up. I think that's good.
So I found some younger people. I found some women that were not, there weren't a strong representation. And the women in particular, there was one in particular I remember in the workshop, and she brought some of the best ideas in there.
Yeah.
And she came from a slightly different sector.
Yep. Was it difficult for you to find women from the appropriate background, like engineering? I know that, certainly in law, we obviously have seen a shift where there's many more women who are going through law school and becoming qualified lawyers. I think we outnumber the men that are graduating at the moment. Curious to know if that's the same in engineering or what you're seeing there. Yeah,
look, women in engineering traditionally is a low representation.
Yeah.
I think at the moment they talk to around 12% in Australia, something like that. Obviously, different industries are different. In infrastructure and transport, I've found that it's a lot higher than it was, for example, in the power generation industry.
I wish I had been switched on to engineering back when I was going through uni, because it certainly wasn't anything that I was encouraged to do, but also didn't. Yeah, it was a very, very male-dominated faculty. And certainly now having become involved in construction disputes and major projects, I think, goodness, there's so many interesting facets of engineering that you could get into and contribute to delivering these major projects. And it would have been lovely had I known that. Anyhow, I'll pass it on to my daughter.
And the women that we've got involved, certainly in our area, they're absolutely amazing engineers. It's I met a female, an engineer recently put on by the company, process engineer, so chemical engineer, which notoriously are the smartest engineers anyway.
Yeah.
So brilliant. And her second degree was in something along the lines of English literature and creative writing or something like that.
So give me your number. One day I might need an expert witness in chemical engineering. Anyone?
Wouldn't that be great? An engineer that can write well.
Yeah, exactly. Writing a report, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So look, back to your point, I guess, around sort of what helps make a team more as well. I think the other thing I really look for is to make sure that the people involved or want to become involved in a project want to do so for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I still find a lot of people want to be involved in projects because it's the name of the project or it's the profile of it, or they think it would be a good step up for the career. Mm-hmm. My approach has always been that it doesn't matter what the project is, I'll dedicate myself 100% to it and I will deliver a good outcome for that project. And I will, bust my gut to make sure that it turns out well. And it doesn't matter if it's something which has got all the glory on the front page of the newspaper or whether it's just an upgrade of some conveyor system in some nondescript mine in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So I think if they're the types of things I look for, I guess, is that diversity, to really think about, the right reasons why people are involved.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm a lawyer. I'm a disputes lawyer. I do construction disputes. I'm very interested to know from your project management engineering perspective what lawyers could do or for example, what I could do to ensure and facilitate project delivery to the extent that, external lawyers have a role in helping with claims or learning the project, even drafting the contract. Now, that's obviously a front-end space. But in terms of the role of lawyers in doing this, I'm keen to hear your thoughts and suggestions on what we're not quite getting right and maybe what we do get right, and certainly any suggestions that you have as to how we can really nail it for you guys.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I've learned and the biggest one of the greatest elements that I guess I've had come in recent years is that awareness of the law. Yep. And that's really made my job a lot easier. I feel like I've done my job in project management a lot better because of having that solid awareness of the legal background to things. Mm-hmm. Project management is all about time, quality and cost. It's all you're thinking constantly. Yeah. Time, quality and cost. And so every issue that arises, every little smoking fire that is they're going to erupt, it's all about is how do I sort that whilst I'm also sorting all of these other things out. So the more that I guess a lawyer can understand that project delivery, the more that lawyers can be involved in delivery and become aware of that experience, I think the better the projects will run. Well,
I certainly think it would be very helpful to gain that intimate understanding of how projects are delivered, but, by boots on the ground, being on site. I know that there was a matter I was involved in, and I actually took a trip up to the mine in the middle of nowhere. And once I saw, the rock and how things were playing out, and it really assisted me to move forward with the matter. I don't get that kind of insight when I'm sitting at my desk on Eagle Street. And so I think it's very important for certainly the lawyers to have that understanding.
I'd advocate for any lawyer if you get briefed and you're involved in a project, get out there as close as you can to something similar that's just already going on and have a look. If it's a project about a new motorway construction or upgrade or something, then find one which is already in construction, go down and drive it on the weekend and drive through it slow and find a spot to pull over and have a bit of a look or, maybe even ring up a contact or connection and arrange for a morning site visit on another project just as a visitor. Yeah. We all have our networks and our connections. Yeah. And at least, start to get a bit of an awareness of those things. It helps immeasurably. Obviously, you can visualize it all, but...
Well, then you understand as well the other factors that are at play, like, the commercial aspects of all of it, the relationship aspects, the practicalities of, okay, well, this project is in the middle of nowhere. So how are we going to realistically manage a risk that arises, at 4:00 today
I think another thing, look, it's a little plug, I guess. I wasn't actively going to do it, but when I did the construction law masters at Melbourne, at the University of Melbourne, that really one of the greatest things about that master's program was that it brought lawyers and delivery people, engineers, commercial managers, quantity surveyor types together in the same learning environment. And, the classes were just so fantastic because we just bounced off each other and learnt so much as a result.
Okay, so Kevin, I like to round off these discussions with a rapid fire Kevin's top 3. So sort of like David Letterman's top 10, probably less controversial, but I thought if you would humor me and do a rapid fire top 3 with me, that would be excellent. So can I kick off with top 3 reasons to pursue engineering?
It teaches you to think a certain way. We're all indoctrinated at university a little bit, but it's all around seeing problems and solutions constantly. So crafts you to a certain way of thinking. You can't walk down the street and just ignore things, unfortunately. It means you're constantly looking at things that are broken and going, oh, why did they do it like that? Yeah. So that's really good. The way it makes you think, I think, quite differently.
Yep.
Engineering, I think, opens you up to a lot of travel and opportunities to travel and in your career. Certainly for me, I spent 10 years, the best part of 10 years overseas, travelling the world. And so that's a really great way of getting out in the world. Engineering is very applicable across the whole world. A power station's a power station anywhere, a road's a road anywhere. Different standards apply for sure, but the same principles are all still there. And the third thing, it's probably what tempted me into it a little bit, is that it was a fairly well-paid, secure sort of a profession. I think going into the future, it's certainly one of these careers which is fairly future-proof.
Yeah.
It will evolve like will many jobs into the future with technology change, but it's not going to be like some other professions.
Automated.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, next one. Top 3 takeaways from your 25-year career.
First, I think always be open to new ideas and opportunities and change, and I think that comes with age. You start to realise that when you're younger, you are resistant to a lot of that. You want, But what I guess I've realised over the years is that it's those opportunities that I embraced and that took me off into slightly different areas outside of the comfort zone that have ultimately then led a path to something else. And if you find yourself going down a path and you decide, this isn't for me, there's no problem with stepping back.
Yeah.
So I think certainly take any opportunity that comes up. You just never know what you'll find. Number 2, I think coming back to, again, travel. Yep. Travel opens up all sorts of opportunity, awareness, knowledge, diversity, understanding of the world and people. You'll end up, I spent so long overseas, you end up with a very different worldview. Yeah. You're less parochial.
Yeah.
You're not so nationalistic or patriotic. It's a real problem when it comes to supporting sporting teams and Olympics and stuff like that. It means absolutely nothing to me, I'm afraid.
Well, I know the feeling, so yeah.
I coached somebody recently that was asking, we're chatting and they said, I'm thinking about going to this conference and I was thinking I should ask, because, and I think there's a good reason for it. And I said, listen, just don't ask. Look, my advice is if it's a conference you think you should go to, you should be going independently of whether or not the boss pays.
Yeah.
So book the conference, get the early bird rate, go yourself.
Yeah.
Run the argument with the boss later, and if they're good, they'll say yes, of course.
Yeah.
If they don't approve it, then that's something for you to then further consider in your relationship with your boss longer term. But don't let not going to the conference impact you because it's something that you've said that you want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, seek forgiveness, don't you?
Yeah. I like that one. I have used that one in the past. Next one is top 3 tips for managing stress.
Social media. Stop doing it.
Stop doing it. Oh, I thought you were going to say get on it. I was like, geez, who are you?
No, look,
get off social media. Have you done a detox?
I don't do a lot anyway. I mean, I don't have Facebook. I don't do. I'm embarrassing myself by not even knowing the names of most of them. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's about it. Don't be bothered with what other people are saying so much and fretting over it. That causes too much stress.
It does.
Worrying about if someone
commented on your post.
Right, and if they don't, they're calling you out and they've got a different of opinion. Well, so what? Everyone else does. So
Get off it.
Get off social media. Take a break from all of that. It just causes stress. Exercise, obviously.
Yeah.
None of us do any of it enough.
I thought you were going to finish there. None of us do any of it.
No.
Stop.
I mean, for me, I've never been a big sports person, but I really like walking and longer distance. I've got a good friend from school and he lives nearby and we often go for a long distance walk. I call it the night walk.
Yep.
We're night walkers.
Yep.
And it's evolved into sort of about a 4 to 5 kilometre walk at night to a microbrewery, and we have a beer, and then we walk the 4.5 k's back.
Perfection. Not only have you worked it off, you've had a catch up with your friend.
Well, and this is the other great thing about it. It's actually, we've solved most of the problems of the world.
Indeed.
We just don't have the right people there along with us to actually action it. And I'm sure that he's learnt far more than he needs to ever know about bridge pile design or set off clauses in construction contracts.
Yes.
But certainly it's certainly a way for me to have gotten that off my chest. And it's great. Do a bit of exercise. I've done the calcs and a schooner for 10 kilometres is absolutely fine.
Perfect.
We're on the positive side of the exercise.
Excellent. That was 2. What's your third one?
I really value very highly individual conversations with people, particularly, obviously in your personal life you have that with your friends, but also at work. And I find that work, there's always this time pressures and, you're punching a clock and there's things to do on a project. But the value I get out of having those one-on-one coffees and lunches with colleagues, which inevitably are friends at work, it's invaluable. I mean, we work through issues, we test ideas with each other. It actually makes us more effective to then go and do the job.
I agree. Cool. I'm going to dob you in for a 4th.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Now, you've mentioned to me previously, and I think our listeners would be really keen to hear about this, but there's an event that you go to at the Tivoli where you sing pop songs. What's it called?
So you're making it out as though I'm...
No, it's you sent me the video and it looks fantastic and I'm going to book in.
So I've never done this before, but on holiday a couple of months ago with some friends, one of them talked to me about it. And what it is it's called pub choir.
Pub choir.
Pub choir.
That's the term I was looking for.
Pub choir. It's evolved into once a month at Brisbane. They go other places as well. But this former music teacher, she's put together this concept where she fills a pub, in this case the Tivoli in Brisbane, which is 1,500 people, splits everyone into 3. I think it's sort of low voices, high voices and in between, and teaches a pop song in 3 harmonies, and everyone rehearses it, and then you all sing it a couple of times at the end of the evening. I think it's about 2 hours, and then they record it all, and apparently it's like this big, fantastic...
I've got to tell you, when you sent me, it was Life in a Northern Town. I can't remember who sings it, but when I saw that last night, my partner and I were looking at it and we thought, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
It looked amazing. And there would have been 1,500 people there singing this.
So we're going along to it tonight for the first time.
You're going tonight. And it's Love Fool by the Cardigans.
Right.
Yep. So just a plug for everybody, if you're looking at YouTube in the future, pub choir, look out for Love Fool by the Cardigans. Kevin will be front row.
You won't see me. I'll be hiding.
I'm keen. I'll definitely do it. Well, look, I would just like to thank you so much for coming in today, Kevin. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you. Just a quick note to conclude to our listeners. The Society is working hard to ramp up its podcast program, so be sure to subscribe to the SCL Australia podcast to be alerted when new episodes are available. And we very much look forward to sharing further podcasts with you. I'm Melissa Yeo. Thanks very much for joining us.